Writing a literature review for a thesis is like telling a story about what other researchers have already discovered about your topic. It helps you show the background of your study, identify gaps in knowledge, and explain why your research is important. The goal is to summarize, analyze, and organize existing studies in a way that connects them to your research question. To start, you need to gather information from reliable sources like academic journals, books, and credible articles related to your topic. For example, if your thesis is about the effects of social media on mental health, you would look for studies that explore topics like how social media impacts anxiety, self-esteem, or depression. As you read, take notes on the key findings, methods, and conclusions of each study. Pay attention to how they relate to each other and to your research. Next, organize the studies into themes or categories. This helps you group similar ideas together and makes your review easier to follow. For example, in the case of social media and mental health, you might create categories like positive effects of social media, negative effects of social media, and limitations in previous studies. You could write something like, Smith, 2020, found that social media can improve self-esteem by providing opportunities for social connection, while Johnson, 2019, showed that excessive use of social media is linked to increased anxiety and feelings of isolation. By grouping studies like this, you help readers see patterns and connections in the research. In your review, explain what each study found and how it relates to your research. For example, while several studies highlight the negative effects of social media, such as increased anxiety and depression, there is limited research on how different types of social media activities, like passive scrolling versus active engagement, influence mental health. This gap is the focus of this thesis. This shows why your research is needed and how it contributes something new. It's also important to discuss disagreements or gaps in the existing research. For example, although Brown, 2021, concluded that social media use positively affects self-esteem, Lee, 2020, argued that these benefits are only temporary and depend on the type of interactions users have. This disagreement highlights the need for more detailed studies on the long-term effects of social media. By pointing out gaps or conflicts, you justify your research and show why it's worth investigating. When writing, use clear and simple language to make your review easy to understand. Avoid complicated terms or unnecessary jargon. For example, instead of saying, the psychological implications of digital interaction modalities require further empirical exploration, you could write, more studies are needed to understand how different ways of using social media affect mental health. Keeping your writing straightforward helps readers follow your ideas without confusion. It's also important to stay focused on your research question. Don't include studies that are unrelated or off-topic. For example, if your thesis is about social media and mental health, avoid discussing studies about traditional media or unrelated topics like online shopping unless they directly connect to your research. In summary, a good literature review summarizes existing research, organizes it into themes, identifies gaps, and explains how your study addresses those gaps. For example, in a thesis about online learning, your literature review might summarize studies about student engagement, group them into categories like benefits of online learning and challenges of online learning, and conclude by highlighting the need for research on specific teaching methods. Writing a clear and focused literature review ensures your readers understand the background of your study and see why it matters.